The bell above the Penny Diner door rang for the last time at 11:47 p.m. on a cold Friday night in March 2025. Rose McCready, 75, turned the sign to "closed" with trembling hands, not from the Boston cold, but from the injustice that was about to destroy 50 years of her life. The Penny Diner wasn't just a restaurant. It was an institution in the heart of the South End, a small sanctuary where 3 generations of Bostonians had shared meals, conversations, and moments that defined their lives. Rose had bought the establishment in 1975 when she was just 25 years old and had a huge dream in her heart. Rose McCready was the daughter of Irish immigrants who arrived in Boston in the 1940s. Her father, Patrick McCready, had worked as a shipyard laborer during World War II, while her mother, Bridget, sewed military uniforms at home to supplement the family income. They lived in a small apartment in Southie, where Rose learned that hard work and honesty were the only paths to a decent life. In 1975, with a decade's savings from working as a waitress in various restaurants in downtown Boston, Rose was able to buy the Penny Diner from her former boss, Murphy O'Brien, who was retiring. The place, which occupied the ground floor of a red brick building built in 1923, had only 12 stools at the counter and 6 small tables. But for Rose, it represented the America of dreams and possibilities. "This place is going to be more than a diner," she told her best friend Linda Santos, a Puerto Rican nurse who lived in the apartment next door. "It's going to be a home for people who don't have families, a dinner table for people who eat alone." And that's exactly what Rose built over the course of 5 decades. For 50 years, the Penny Diner became a refuge for a quirky and loyal clientele. There were Vietnam veterans who had coffee at 5 in the morning before going to construction jobs. There was Tony Benedetto, a 68-year-old former Italian boxer who came every day at 2 p.m. to eat apple pie and tell stories of when he fought at Madison Square Garden. Frank O'Sullivan, the 82-year-old former mayor of Boston, had his table reserved every Tuesday and Thursday. Even after leaving politics, Frank continued to treat the Penny Diner as his unofficial office, where he welcomed ordinary people who needed help navigating the municipal bureaucracy. "Rose, you feed more than bodies here," Frank would say, savoring her famous Irish stew. "You feed souls." Maria Gonzalez, a 45-year-old Salvadoran immigrant who worked cleaning offices in the financial district, brought her 3 children to the Penny Diner for dinner every Sunday after Mass. Rose always gave the children free dessert and never charged for refills of milk. The diner was also frequented by Joey Chen, a 58-year-old Chinese-American chef who had gained national fame with the TV show Joey's Kitchen on the Food Network. Despite owning 3 upscale restaurants in Boston, Joey considered the Penny Diner the place where American food has soul. The first sign that trouble was brewing came in January 2025, when Rose received a letter from the property owner, Harold Blackstone. Harold, a 52-year-old real estate developer known for his aggressive business tactics, had inherited several buildings in the South End from his father, but had always shown little interest in the family legacy. "Dear Rose McCready," the formal letter read, "we are writing to inform you that the lease for the establishment known as Penny Diner will not be renewed at the end of the current term, which expires on March 31, 2025. This decision is based on the need to modernize the space to meet new commercial standards." Rose read the letter 3 times before she fully understood it. 50 years of history were being dumped into 3 bureaucratic paragraphs. "Modernization?" she muttered to Linda, who had rushed to the diner as soon as Rose called in a panic. "What's wrong with a place where people feel at home?" Linda, now 71 and retired, took the letter indignantly. "That Blackstone doesn't understand anything about community. To him, it's all about money." What Rose didn't know was that Harold Blackstone had received an offer he couldn't refuse from Fast Bite Corporation, a national fast food chain specializing in standardized hamburgers and French fries. The company was offering 3 times the current rent, plus a $500,000 bonus for immediate termination of existing contracts. Harold saw the South End rapidly gentrifying, with young professionals replacing traditional working-class families. To him, the Penny Diner represented an anachronism that stood in the way of the neighborhood's progress. "It's nothing personal," he told the lawyer representing Fast Bite. "It's just business. That diner is a thing of the past." But Harold seriously underestimated what he was about to face. News of the Penny Diner's imminent closure spread through the community like wildfire. Frank O'Sullivan was the first to act, using his contacts at City Hall to investigate the legal situation surrounding the eviction. "Rose," Frank said at an emergency meeting at the diner itself, "you have rights as a long-time tenant. 50 years of paying rent can't be ignored like this." Joey Chen, the TV chef, cancelled his recordings for a week to devote himself fully to the case. "The Penny Diner is a Boston cultural treasure," he declared on his social media accounts, which had 3 million followers. "We can't let corporate greed destroy our history," but the real driving force behind the movement was Mike Sullivan, president of Local 26 of the Boston Food and Hospitality Workers Union. Mike, a 62-year-old Irish-American with 40 years of union activism under his belt, saw the Penny Diner case as an opportunity to demonstrate the power of labor organization. "It's not just about Rose," Mike explained at a union meeting. "It's about every small business being crushed by soulless corporations. If we don't fight here, where are we going to fight?" The coalition that formed in defense of Penny Diner was unlikely, but powerful. Frank O'Sullivan brought political clout. Joey Chen brought national media attention. Mike Sullivan brought the organizational strength of the workers, and Rose brought what was most important, the moral legitimacy of someone who had dedicated her entire life to serving her community. Linda Santos, despite her age, took on the role of general campaign coordinator. Her experience as a nurse had taught her how to organize people under pressure, and she applied those skills to the defense of the diner. "We need 3 fronts," Linda explained during a meeting in Rose's living room. "Legal, political, and public relations." Frank was put in charge of the political front, using his contacts to investigate possible irregularities in Harold Blackstone's operations. Joey would lead the media campaign, using his fame to attract national attention. Mike would organize protests and direct action through the union. Frank O'Sullivan spent 2 weeks investigating Harold Blackstone through contacts at City Hall, the tax department, and the Chamber of Commerce. What he found was political dynamite. "Rose," Frank said, walking into the diner one Monday morning with a briefcase full of documents, "your landlord has some serious problems with the Internal Revenue Service." The documents showed that Harold Blackstone had used a complex network of shell companies to evade taxes for more than 10 years. He created front companies, transferred property between them to confuse auditors, and reported rental values far below what he actually charged. "He owes more than $2 million in back taxes," Frank explained, "and the Penny Diner building is being used as collateral for loans he took out using forged documents." While Frank dug up dirt on Blackstone, Joey Chen was mobilizing his media influence. He convinced the producers of Joey's Kitchen to do a special episode on American diner culture, filmed entirely at Penny Diner. "This place represents everything that is authentic in American cuisine," Joey told the cameras, as Rose prepared her famous pancakes. "It's not about technology or efficiency, it's about humanity." The episode, which aired on a Thursday night, attracted 4.2 million viewers and generated more than 50,000 messages of support on social media. Tourists began showing up at the diner, wanting to try the authentic American food they saw on TV. But Joey didn't stop there. He called on influential friends in the national food media. Anthony Ricci, a critic for the New York Times, came to Boston especially to write about Penny Diner. His article, titled "The Last Stand of American Authenticity," was reprinted in dozens of newspapers across the country. Mike Sullivan turned the Penny Diner cause into a broad union issue. He organized weekly protests in front of Harold Blackstone's building, always with workers from restaurants, hotels, and food services. "This is our moment," Mike told hundreds of workers gathered in Boston Common. "If they can shut down the Penny Diner today, they can shut down any small business tomorrow. Our jobs depend on these family-owned businesses." The union also organized a boycott of Blackstone's businesses. He owned 4 other commercial buildings in the South End, and the union got several tenants to refuse to renew their leases until he reconsidered the diner's situation. The national attention attracted by Joey Chen caught the attention of Sarah Morrison, a 34-year-old investigative reporter for the Boston Globe who specialized in real estate corruption. Sarah decided to investigate Harold Blackstone independently. What she discovered was even more explosive than Frank O'Sullivan's findings. Blackstone wasn't just evading taxes, he was involved in a money laundering scheme that included at least 12 local politicians and 3 construction companies. Blackstone used shell companies to receive money from construction companies in exchange for insider information on urban zoning, Sarah explained to Rose during an interview. The money was laundered through fictitious rents on properties he controlled. Sarah's article, published on a Friday, caused a huge political scandal. 2 city councillors resigned that same day, and the FBI announced the opening of a federal investigation. With revelations of corruption dominating the headlines, Harold Blackstone found himself in a desperate situation. IRS agents froze his bank accounts, the FBI was investigating his companies, and public pressure was immense. Blackstone tried one last gambit. He offered to renew Rose's lease for another 10 years, provided she agreed to modernize the diner according to Fast Bite Corporation standards. They wanted me to remove the original counter, install televisions at every table, and replace the homemade menu with industrialized products, Rose told Linda indignantly. It would have been the penny diner in name only. Rose rejected the offer immediately. I'd rather close with dignity than turn my life into a lie. It was Tony Benedetto, the former boxer who had been a regular at the diner for 20 years, who provided the information that finally brought down Harold Blackstone. Tony had worked as a night security guard in several buildings in downtown Boston and knew many secrets behind the scenes of the real estate business. Rose, Tony said one Tuesday afternoon, eating his usual apple pie, "You know Blackstone owes money to some dangerous people, right?" Tony revealed that Harold owed $800,000 to an Italian crime organization that financed illegal real estate deals. The pressure for quick cash was the real reason behind the sale to Fast Bite Corporation. "He's not trying to modernize anything," Tony explained. "He's desperate to pay off his debts before they break his legs." Tony's information was passed on to Sarah Morrison, who confirmed it through sources at the FBI. The report on Harold Blackstone's criminal debts was the last straw. On a Monday morning, Harold Blackstone was arrested at his office in downtown Boston, charged with tax evasion, money laundering, and criminal conspiracy. The handcuffs were snapped on while he was on the phone with representatives from Fast Bite Corporation. With Blackstone in custody, his properties were placed under court receivership. The federal judge presiding over the case, Thomas Murphy, ruled that all existing lease agreements would be honored until the case was finally resolved. Mr. Blackstone cannot profit from criminal activity by evicting honest tenants, the judge declared during the hearing. News of Blackstone's arrest reached Penny Diner via Joey Chen, who called Rose screaming with joy. "Rose, turn on the TV, the bastard's been arrested." The diner quickly filled with regular customers and supporters. Frank O'Sullivan arrived with a bottle of Irish champagne he had been saving for 20 years. Mike Sullivan brought dozens of union workers to celebrate. Joey Chen cancelled his recordings and came straight from New York to the impromptu party. "You saved more than a restaurant," Rose said emotionally to the crowd gathered in the small diner. "You saved the idea that ordinary people can win when they stand together." With Harold Blackstone in prison, his properties were auctioned off to pay debts and fines. The Penny Diner building was purchased by a consortium formed by Mike Sullivan's own union, with financing from a local credit union. "Now the diner belongs to the workers who defended it," Mike announced during the property transfer ceremony. "Rose will have a lifetime contract, and when she retires, the space will remain a community diner." Rose, now 76, decided to make some voluntary upgrades, but always keeping the original spirit of the place. She installed a better air conditioning system, renovated the kitchen with more efficient equipment, and created a small space for community events. 6 months after the victory, the Penny Diner became a national model of community resistance. Delegations from other cities visited Boston to understand how a small community had defeated a powerful corporation. Joey Chen produced a documentary about the story titled "The Last Recipe: How a Diner Saved a Community," which was nominated for an Emmy for Best Documentary. All proceeds from the film were donated to a fund that helps small businesses threatened by gentrification. Sarah Morrison won the Pulitzer Prize for Investigative Journalism for her reporting on Harold Blackstone's corruption ring. Her investigation led to the arrest of 17 people and the recovery of $12 million in unpaid taxes. Harold Blackstone was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison for tax evasion, money laundering, and racketeering. He lost all his property, had his bank accounts seized, and his company was declared bankrupt. His wife, Patricia, filed for divorce and moved to Florida with their 2 teenage children. "My children will not carry the shame of what their father did," she told the Boston Globe. In prison, Harold works in the kitchen for 75 cents an hour. Ironically, he serves food to other inmates, an activity he never appreciated when he was free. 2.5 years after the victory, Rose McCready continues to run the Penny Diner every day. At 78, she trained Maria Gonzalez, the Salvadoran immigrant who used to frequent the diner with her children, to be the assistant manager. Maria understands what this place means, Rose said during an interview on the 3rd anniversary of the victory. She will make sure the Penny Diner continues to be a home for those in need. Maria's children, now teenagers, work part-time at the diner after school, learning the values of hard work and community service that Rose has always preached. The story of the Penny Diner inspired legislation in Massachusetts and other states to protect historic businesses from predatory gentrification. The Rose McCready Act gives special renewal rights to commercial tenants with more than 20 years of continuous operation. Frank O'Sullivan, now 85, was elected to City Council on a campaign focused on protecting small businesses. "The Penny Diner taught me that politics should serve people, not corporations," he says. Joey Chen has launched a second TV show, Community Kitchens, which highlights family-owned restaurants threatened with closure across the country. It has already saved 17 establishments from closing through media exposure. On an autumn afternoon, 3 years after nearly losing everything, Rose was at the Penny Diner preparing her famous Irish stew when a nervous 25-year-old walked in. "Mrs. McCready, I'm a reporter for the Harvard Crimson. I'm writing about how small communities can resist gentrification. What have you learned from all this?" Rose stopped stirring the stew and looked at the young man with a wise smile. "I've learned that when you serve people with love for 50 years, they'll serve you back when you need it. I've learned that true friends are more powerful than any corporation. And I've learned that you're never too old to fight for what's right." The young journalist wrote down every word, but Rose wasn't finished. "But the most important lesson," she continued, "is that places like this, where ordinary people can sit side by side and treat each other with dignity, are what make America work. Harold Blackstone thought he could buy and sell our community. He found out that some things aren't for sale. Today, in 2025, the Penny Diner serves more than 300 meals a day. The clientele includes the usual regulars and a new generation of young professionals who value authenticity in an increasingly artificial world." Rose McCready, at 78, still arrives every day at 5:30 a.m. to prepare the pancake batter. Maria Gonzalez arrives at 6 a.m. to help with breakfast. Tony Benedetto still eats apple pie at 2 p.m. Frank O'Sullivan still uses his usual table to welcome people who need help. And every night when Rose turns the sign to closed, she whispers a little prayer of gratitude. Not just for saving her diner, but for discovering that her community would never abandon her. "The Penny Diner isn't mine," she often says. "I belong to the Penny Diner. And as long as Boston needs a place where ordinary people can be treated like family, we'll be here." The last recipe. On the wall of the Penny Diner, next to the historical record and photos of famous customers, there is a simple frame with a recipe handwritten by Rose McCready. Recipe for saving a community. 1 generous serving of courage. True friends, the more the better. 1 cup of justice. Pinch of persistence. Lots of love for the community. Season with outrage against injustice. Mix well and serve hot. Makes enough to feed a whole town. The real recipe isn't for food, it's for hope.